What is up, Chargers fans? Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. Today, we're discussing Jim Harbaugh's potential Chargers coaching staff. How much longer can we talk about Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers? I don't know. But as long as Jim Harbaugh is available and the Chargers need a head coach, we're going to talk about him and milk this situation for all it's worth. If you're listening to this on Saturday, hey, thank you for being a Patreon supporter or YouTube member. We really, really do appreciate it. You guys get this stuff early. If not, hey, thanks for being here anyway. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a dislike. I don't care. It helps with the engagement either way. So let's get into it. This one is for the nerds. And heck, I even think this one is for the sickos. And I certainly feel like a sicko after going through all of the coaching staffs of the last decade plus, from 2011 to 2014 with the 49ers, and then 2015 to present with the Michigan Wolverines. I've gone through a lot of coaching staffs, and I've read a lot of names and a lot of Wikipedia pages to bring you 20 different names for offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, linebackers coach, pass game coordinator, associate head coach, offensive line, you name it. We've got it here. So, guidelines for this, I tried as much as possible to avoid college to NFL promotions, because I could go through and find Florida Atlantic special teams coordinator that worked with Harbaugh once and make him the Chargers special teams coordinator. But I don't know how entrenched each of those guys is at the college level. The only obvious ones that I picked were the ones who could go from Michigan with Harbaugh to the NFL. Everyone else, I left alone. That's messy. That's a lot of work. All right, I'm not that much of a sicko. The other guideline, they had to have worked with Jim Harbaugh. So they may have also worked with John Harbaugh, but they had to have worked with Jim to make this list. So they had to work with Jim at any point. They may have worked with John too, but they had to have worked with Jim. Otherwise, I'd be pulling half the Ravens coaching staff to be on this list. And I can't do that. That's too long of a list. And that's a lot of years to go through too. And finally, I tried to think of a reasonable promotion or role for each individual. So either they're in the NFL and they're trying to get a promotion and they can only leave because of a promotion, or they're not in the NFL or they were fired recently. You'll see in a bit. And this might be a particular role for them to have. We'll see. You let me know what you think at the end of this. Here we go. So one I'm really excited about is Terrell. I haven't seen a ton of discussion around him as a potential offensive coordinator option for Jim Harbaugh, but he is currently the Cardinals pass game coordinator and wide receivers coach with a couple interesting connections. He was a Stanford wide receiver / punt returner special teams guy for 2 years under Jim Harbaugh while at Stanford. And then he was also a Michigan graduate assistant for 3 years at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. So pretty interesting connections there as a player and then working with him. You'll see throughout this that Jim Harbaugh has brought a lot of guys with him to different spots. There rarely is just a single specific place where he worked with this individual. And I think that does mean something when doing a video like this, because that means he's probably going to pull from these guys and bring them to the Chargers if he can. So those are the two connections with him. One noteworthy piece on Terrell here is that he did get interviewed by the Cardinals to be their offensive coordinator last year with Petzig, and then he'll be the Shrine Bowl offensive coordinator in 2024. So there's been some buzz, of course, and some interviews about him being an actual offensive coordinator. So I think that the next step for him, because he can't take a lateral job, he's going to get a promotion to offensive coordinator at some point, potentially with Jim Harbaugh. Next up, either as a pass game coordinator or even as the offensive coordinator, might be too early, but hey, who knows? That's Bobby Ingram, who's currently the Commanders wide receivers coach. He was with the 49ers in 2011 as an offensive assistant, had a great NFL career, 650 receptions, 7,751 yards, 35 touchdowns in the NFL. He worked with John Harbaugh as a wide receivers, tight ends coach from 2014 to 2020-21. So 2 Harbaugh connections there, but at least the requisite Jim Harbaugh connection there in 2011. And for what it's worth, he was the Wisconsin offensive coordinator in 2022. Not that that's a high-flying pass game offense, but still it is worth pointing out that these guys, some of these guys, do have coordinator experience even at the college level, even just to any capacity, which should help them stand out. So that's an intriguing one for sure. Scott Tolzien. Did you expect to see Scott Tolzien on this list? Maybe you did, and you're a sicko. I don't know. Current role, he's a Cowboys quarterbacks coach. He could be the Chargers quarterbacks coach if there was overhaul with the Cowboys, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. And we'll see what even happens with the Chargers offensive coordinator / quarterback coach situation, right? Depends what they do with Kellen Moore. I think Scott Tolzien, if he wants to take a promotion, could be, let's say, pass game coordinator for the Chargers. So he was the 49ers quarterback from 2011 to 2012, or he was one. He was not the quarterback, but he was a quarterback on the roster with Jim Harbaugh for 2 years. He's also a former Charger, I believe, just as a practice squad guy or undrafted free agent. One of the two, I don't recall. And then former Colts quarterback, actually, while Ed Dodds was with the Colts when Ed Dodds joined the Colts in 2017. So not that it's set in stone, but hey, if Ed Dodds is going to be the general manager, and it sounds like if it's Jim Harbaugh, that is the most natural guy for general manager, given their previous relationship and the fact that, hey, he's a good candidate, that, hey, one more connection for Scott Tolzien wouldn't hurt. So I think that's a name to keep an eye on. I have him labeled here as a pass game coordinator, but I could see him being upgraded into any kind of role outside of offensive coordinator outright. All right, next up is Tanner Engstrand, arguably the most popular choice for offensive coordinator among Chargers fans. Everyone wants a piece of that Detroit offense, that Detroit passing game, and he's currently the Detroit Lions pass game coordinator, has held that role for a couple of years now. With Jim Harbaugh, he was a University of San Diego graduate assistant for 2 years with Harbaugh, and then a Michigan offensive analyst in 2018. The catch here, obviously, is that if Ben Johnson leaves, Tanner Engstrand is going to probably be the next offensive coordinator for the Lions. It makes the most sense for them. But hey, in the off chance he wants to leave, or in the random unlikely chance that Ben Johnson stays with the Lions, then yeah, Tanner Engstrand can come over here, be the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh, work that connection, and we'll see what happens. But I do think he ends up staying with Detroit. All right, next up, the name that Chargers fans don't want to see is Greg Roman. I do not believe he would be added as an offensive coordinator, excuse me, to this staff. I don't think that's at all what Justin Herbert needs. It wasn't obviously what Lamar Jackson needed either. So I think that you got to find a role for him that would be a good role, right? One that's very supportive of Jim Harbaugh and the whole team, but one that doesn't make him the offensive coordinator. So he currently has no role. He was the former Ravens offensive coordinator until 2022. They changed that, and of course, they've improved tremendously because of it. As you all know, former Stanford associate head coach. He was the 49ers offensive coordinator for the whole time that Jim Harbaugh was there. So, of course, if your only NFL offensive coordinator is available, it could be intriguing to go get that offensive coordinator again. I just think that Jim Harbaugh would move on. I think that they would not go this route. So what do? I think you go with something like associate head coach and maybe tight ends coach. He has been a quarterbacks coach, a tight ends coach, an offensive line coach. So I think that you could find some sort of role with them. In fact, if they make him run game coordinator, associate head coach, I would get that too. The reason to bring him up for sure too, other than the connection, is that he did get an offensive coordinator interview with the Bears. So he is still out there as an offensive coordinator candidate, did get an interview there. I don't know if anywhere else. And he's also worked with Jim Harbaugh, but John Harbaugh with the Ravens, as we just talked about. And just for funsies, just letting you know, he's also from John Carroll. Can't think of anybody else from John Carroll, that's for sure. So Greg Roman, I think like associate head coach, and then some sort of minor position coach role, run game coordinator kind of role. I could see that. All right, Ronald Curry, another popular name among Chargers fans. He's currently the Saints pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He's been that since 2021 and held a couple different roles, I think, over there. The connection to Jim Harbaugh is that he was actually the Raiders quarterback while Harbaugh was the quarterback coach of the Raiders. And then in 2014, he was the 49ers offensive assistant. So again, a lot of different names on this list, and we'll keep seeing this as we go through. They've worked with Harbaugh in several spots, either as a player and then a coach, or an assistant and then a coach, or whatever, several different spots. Noteworthy, I think, is that Greg Roman did want Curry to follow him to Buffalo in 2015, which was post Harbaugh, but the 49ers denied it. So if Greg Roman joins the staff, I could see another guy that he wanted to bring with him following him to the Chargers, although Curry would have the more prominent role as the offensive coordinator, maybe Greg Roman as the associate head coach, like I just talked about. So there's definitely a connection there. Keep an eye on this one for sure. Next up, John Morton, who's currently the Denver pass game coordinator, has only held that role this past year. The Harbaugh connection is pretty significant. He was the Raiders offensive assistant in 2002 to 2003 while Harbaugh was there. He was the University of San Diego pass game coordinator / wide receivers coach. And then he was the 49ers wide receivers coach from 2011 to 2014. So I think, given that he's the Denver Broncos pass game coordinator, that while he spent a lot of time as a wide receivers coach, because he's a pass game coordinator, I believe the only next step he would take is as an offensive coordinator. So I could definitely see that being an option for Jim Harbaugh. Noteworthy, he worked at USC from 2007 to 2010. So a lot of California team kind of stuff here with John Morton. And so I think that Harbaugh could pull him. I don't know if that's my favorite option, but he's worked with Harbaugh at 3 different spots. So worth pointing out. Next up, Mick Lombardi. Now, Wikipedia says this is not a relation to Vince Lombardi or Joe Lombardi. It's a different Lombardi. I don't know. You guys figure it out. You be the judge. Currently, no role. He was fired along with Josh McDaniels, which I know isn't a ringing endorsement. How much of that offense, how much of that issue was Josh McDaniels? We'll see. Obviously, we did see, but how much of it was Mick Lombardi or not Mick Lombardi? I guess we'll maybe never find out, but if we do, he might be the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. He was the 49ers assistant head coach and offensive assistant in 2013 and 2014. And of the candidates, I do like a lot of these other candidates more, right? They are, but they're pass game coordinators or they're wide receivers coaches or whatever. He, at least in title, was an offensive coordinator for 2 years with the Raiders. The difference is, of course, that he was not the primary play caller. So it's an option. I don't know if fans love it. I don't know if fans want another Lombardi out here, but we'll see some familiar faces and names going down this list too. Alrighty. Speaking of McDaniels, Ben McDaniels, who is currently the Texans wide receivers coach, pass game coordinator this past year. Hey, man, if you're looking at a team that's playing some really good offense and developing receivers well and has a great pass game, that's the Texans. That being said, he held this role last year too, and it's not like the Texans were as prolific an offense as they are this year, although they didn't have CJ Stroud. But still, it is a very intriguing option because I don't know if but the receivers for Houston have developed tremendously. I mean, Nico Collins is an actual wide receiver one in the NFL before he got hurt. Tank Dell was looking incredible. Probably would have set, oh no, what am I saying? I would have said he would set the rookie receiving yards this year, but no, that's obviously Puka Nacua, but he wasn't far behind. So that's definitely an option. He was a Michigan offensive analyst and quarterbacks coach from 2018 to 2020. And honestly, I kind of giggled looking at this photo because I finally see it. He's Josh McDaniels' younger brother, and he's totally Josh McDaniels' younger brother looking at this photo. It might as well be Josh McDaniels on my screen right now, but that's Ben McDaniels. Like other people I've mentioned, he was a former offensive coordinator. He was Rutgers offensive coordinator for 1 year. I don't know if that means he was bad or good and he got promoted. I have no idea. I'll have to ask Alex, our resident Rutgers expert, but that is definitely an option for the Chargers there as offensive coordinator. That's a name that I do like, given, if you're just looking at current role and how they're doing, the Texans wide receivers and pass game, pretty darn good, even though if a lot of that is Slowick. All righty. Let's go with a familiar name here, Pep Hamilton, formerly the Texans offensive coordinator. I don't believe he'd be brought on as an offensive coordinator. It just doesn't seem like when he gets the opportunity to be an offensive coordinator that it's really, really worked. A lot of experience doing it. So I'd get it in the sense. And in 2021, I'd understand if he got that promotion to offensive coordinator, but things have changed. The Texans obviously weren't great. So I don't think he'll get the offensive coordinator job, but we do have to mention it. I think quarterbacks coach would be awesome. Like that would be the dream. What would be such a great freaking option for Justin Herbert to have his rookie quarterback back. Obviously, for Jim Harbaugh, connection via Stanford as their wide receivers coach, and then was a Michigan assistant head coach / pass game coordinator from 2017 to 2018. Obviously, Herbert's former quarterbacks coach. And I found out that he spent time in 2023 on NFL Network. I couldn't find a ton of segments. I couldn't even find if he was still doing that, but maybe he wants to do that instead. I have no idea, but it was noteworthy, something worth pointing out, just a little bit of extra for you guys. All right, Tim Drno. I think if there's any lock to be anything for Jim Harbaugh, it is Tim Drno as their offensive line coach. He's currently UCLA's offensive line coach and has been for the last 2 seasons. His connection to Jim Harbaugh is, take a deep breath, he was the University of San Diego offensive coordinator / offensive line coach from 2004 to 2006. He was the Stanford tight ends coach and offensive line coach from 2007 to 2010. He was the 49ers offensive line coach from 2011 to 2013 and Michigan's offensive coordinator offensive line coach from 2015 to 2017. So yeah, 4 different places: San Diego, Stanford, 49ers, Michigan. Basically everywhere Harbaugh has been, Drno has followed. For what it's worth, I put this as noteworthy because I think it's cool. He's from Torrance, California, and went to El Camino Community College, went to Cal State Fullerton. These are all things of my heart. I was born in Torrance, California. My mom she grew up in Exton, Pennsylvania, but they moved to Torrance, California. That's where my grandparents are. My parents met at El Camino Community College. My dad went to Fullerton. I went to Fullerton. So I don't know. Small world, I guess. Not that these are small places, but pretty cool. So that's a little noteworthy just for me in this one. But overall, obviously here, a lot of California teams. I mean, he was also with USC before UCLA. So USC, UCLA, University of San Diego, Stanford, the 49ers, coached at Cal State Fullerton, went to Cal State Fullerton, went to El Camino College in California, like California guy. So let's keep him here. All right. Next up, I don't know if it's a surprise, but I guess surprise. Like there wasn't a ton of buzz around this name, David Shaw. And I think this is where you get an associate head coach, potential offensive coordinator, but I think some sort of position coach. And I'll skip to the noteworthy part of his little bio here because he's had many roles. He's been an outside linebackers coach, tight ends, offensive quality control, quarterbacks, wide receivers, passing game coordinator. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach. So you could really just add him to wherever you need him. So I think that some sort of associate head coach title, and then maybe a position coach role or quality control or something, like I think there's going to be a role for David Shaw. And I think that the Chargers would benefit from David Shaw, or even, I know you don't love it, but Greg Roman being on the team as like an associate head coach to help Jim Harbaugh manage the staff and work on everything to build out this roster, to get better in the trenches, to be a better offense. Again, not the offensive coordinator, because I don't think those roles fit, but possible. But I think better as an associate head coach and then assisting somewhere else, really wherever Harbaugh decides to go. All right, let's get into defense. Jesse Minter, that is obviously one of the college pulls from Michigan. I don't really think that there's another betting favorite for defensive coordinator other than Jesse Minter. If there are any bets out there, I don't know. Maybe it's Prize Picks. Let me know. But he's currently the Michigan defensive coordinator, was the interim head coach for 1 game. Everyone got like a different game, except for Moore, who got, I think, 3 games. So anyway, the Harbaugh connection is obvious. Michigan, don't need to talk about that. But hey, he was also the Ravens defensive assistant and DB coach from 2019 to 2020 with John Harbaugh. So a lot of Harbaugh connections there. He's literally working with Jim Harbaugh right now. That defense kicks ass. They won the national championship. Hard to say no to Jesse Minter right now and how that defense is done. And I really think, this is also McDonald as well, but I really feel like the Michigan defensive players have translated to the NFL so much better than the offensive guys. I really can't think of a ton. Is Nico Collins from Michigan? I don't remember. Anyway, but I think overall the defensive guys, granted it's easier if you're Aiden Hutchinson, they do translate to the NFL a bit better and have translated better. And it just seems to be the next thing. Let's go get the next McDonald. Pair Herbert up. Maybe you can't get McDonald as your head coach, but get the guy who replaced McDonald at Michigan, whose defense is excellent, to work with Justin Herbert as his defensive coordinator. That's enticing, man. All right. Next one is Ejiro Evero. Apologies for that one. Would be the defensive coordinator. I don't think there's any shot he leaves Carolina unless he's the defensive coordinator or maybe like assistant head coach, defensive coordinator. Needs some sort of, title promotion to be poached. He's currently the Panthers defensive coordinator. Was with the 49ers as a quality control coach, as an offensive assistant and a defense assistant. I believe he was also on special teams. That might have been his quality control role before he switched to offense and then defense, which is kind of interesting. He does seem likely to be retained. The buzz seems to be they go with like a first-time offensive head coach, pair that with Evero as the mainstay, as the veteran guy. So kind of like Tanner Engstrand. I don't know if he's actually available. Technically, he's not available at all. But if someone walks into Carolina and just blows up the whole operation, Evero is available. Great option there for sure. Someone who's actually been a defensive coordinator in the NFL, which might give him the edge over Minter, given that he's only been a defensive coordinator at college. But hey, either option would be great. All right. Ed Donatel. If that sounds familiar, no, he's not a Ninja Turtle. His son is Tom Donatel, who's the current Chargers pass game coordinator. I don't know for how long, but hey, just got to throw that out there as something noteworthy. He's been a defensive coordinator for 12 years with several different teams all around the NFL, college, etc. Like he's the most veteran option. Does that mean he's a good one? I don't know. He was the former Vikings defensive coordinator in 2022. Flores, of course, turned that unit all the way around with, I think, even fewer pieces, honestly, considering they traded Smith. So I don't know if the Vikings defense is the one you want to go for, but if you feel like just as a head coach and pairing with the defensive coordinator and maybe some other support staff, you can be better than Donatel was with the Vikings or his other stops, fine. He was the 49ers DB coach from 2011 to 2014. I guess it's possible he returns to some sort of role like that, considering he's not currently employed. But I just think at this point, would he take a DB secondary role? I don't know. But if he does, hey, that could be something. But I think it'd be more likely as a defensive coordinator for this team, even though I don't know if I love that. All right. Linebackers / defensive assistant. That'd be Peter Hansen. So he's currently the Panthers linebackers coach. So like Evero, if they stay, they're staying. But if something happens and things blow up, then maybe they go something else. Maybe they go linebackers and run game coordinator. And that's his sort of promotion to go to the Chargers rather than stay to Carolina, which is not a fun place right now, it seems. The owner will throw you a drink, though. That's cool. The Harbaugh connection, Stanford. Interesting. This is an interesting one. He was Stanford's strength and conditioning coach in 2008, and then he was the defensive assistant from 2009 to 2010, and then he was the 49ers defensive assistant and quality control coach from 2011 to 2013. So with Harbaugh at Stanford, with Harbaugh with the 49ers, currently working with linebackers. He was UNLV's defensive coordinator. I did not look at UNLV's success as a defense. So I couldn't tell you how good UNLV's defense was. But again, like these candidates, it is worth pointing out when they are a coordinator. I don't think he's in line to be a coordinator for the Chargers, but I think the experience does help. So I think if he's going to join this team, if he's going to join the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, I think it would be, keep him with linebackers and then maybe something like run game coordinator. Speaking of which, by the way, I love comparing the side-by-sides of Michael Willhoit with the Chargers versus the Broncos, or even with the Saints to the Broncos, because you have Willhoit, then it's just Willhoit with glasses, and he's just upgraded. This is his upgraded version of himself. Michael Willhoit, often compared to one Stephen Haglund, the host of the Guilty as Charged podcast. I think I'm only including this one because of the connection, not necessarily because I think he'll really go back to the Chargers. So he's currently the Broncos outside linebackers coach. He was a 49ers linebacker for Harbaugh from 2011 to 2014. I believe he was like an undrafted free agent, then worked his way to worked on special teams, obviously. He was the Chargers linebackers coach, for those who don't know, was let go for Jeff Howard. It sounds like he was let go, though, more because of a clash with Staley / because of a scapegoat fire. So if he only views that particular let go as a Staley influenced thing, then maybe he'd be open to returning. And I don't think he disliked his time here with the Chargers, although all his guys are going to be gone when he returns, but it's an option. It's a connection. He's currently, again, the outside linebackers coach for the Broncos. He could come back, but he have to have some sort of upgrade. So linebackers coach, run game coordinator, that sort of thing. Whether he does that or not, we'll see. All right, Greg Jackson for either secondary coach, maybe defensive pass game coordinator, maybe even defensive coordinator. I don't know. But he's currently the Texans safety coach and has held that role since 2021. He was a 49ers defensive assistant from 2011 to 2014, and then Michigan DB's coach in 2015. So with Harbaugh all throughout his 49ers tenure, and then immediately followed him to Michigan when Harbaugh went to Michigan. So that's important. Really cool here. He was a former Chargers safety from 1997 to 2000. So you can Google Greg Jackson Chargers safety, and Greg Jackson pops up. It's pretty cool. And what's really cool is he actually played with Jim Harbaugh. They were both on the Chargers together back in the day. And so that's pretty cool. How often do you get a player who used to play with the coach, maybe potentially be on the same coaching staff? That's pretty cool. Alrighty. Last but not least, we'll get to some special teams options. Overall, I think it is Ryan Ficken, and frankly, if it's not Ryan Ficken, you don't deserve to be the coach of the Chargers. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. Like if it's not Ryan Ficken, you messed up. But if it's not Ryan Ficken, we'll discuss some up. Wow, I cannot say that. We will discuss some options. There we go. So TJ, I believe it's Weist. East? I thought you said Weist. Let me know if you get the reference. TJ Weist, current role as a Ravens special teams coach. He's not the special teams coordinator. I don't actually know what his specific role is, but he was a Michigan offensive analyst in 2015. Obviously, he's got ties to both Harbaughs. He's been a wide receivers coach. He's been a tight ends coach. He's been an offensive coordinator. So it could be like if he were to join the Chargers, maybe even not a special teams coordinator. He could be a special teams guy, offensive assistant. I don't know. There could be another role there, or he could just be the special teams coordinator. But TJ Weist, one to keep an eye on, I guess. But even then, I think it's Ryan Ficken. And it also could be Jay Harbaugh. The connection to Jim Harbaugh there. His current role is as the Michigan special teams coordinator and their interim head coach for one game, like the other guys. Noteworthy, he was Ravens offensive quality control coach from 2012 to 2014. So again, a lot of the, both Harbaugh connections there. It's possible he's the guy. I believe up until the playoffs that the Michigan Wolverines had a good special teams unit. Then we watched the Alabama game, and that wasn't great. So that definitely gave me pause there. So, hey, if you're somebody's son and you currently work with that person, it is possible that Jim Harbaugh brings Jay to the NFL. But again, if it's not Ryan Ficken, I think the Chargers need to start over and try again, because I've never seen an individual beat the system as much as Ryan Ficken has been able to do as the special teams coordinator for the Chargers. So that's it. 20 names, a lot to go through. We're almost about half an hour into this video. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. Assemble your staff or find a name that I didn't find. I didn't exactly find everyone. So there might be somebody that I missed, but I got 20 names on there. So hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully one of these guys ends up on the staff. So we'll see. So these were just Jim Harbaugh connections. Of course, he could pull from any team to get their best guys because he's Jim Harbaugh. But as we've seen through some of these guys here, Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh like to use some of the same guys, some of the same coaches that they've already worked with, players that they've worked with, etc. So we'll see. All right, guys, take care. And as always, pulled up.